All right. What's up, guys? This is West Point Steve. We are going to play Final Fight 2. We just had a really good run by enemy. I guess that's how you say it. Enemy with the Final Fight run. I have with me Rotorstorm 331. He's going to be doing most of the commentary for this run because this is going to be a little bit of a painstakingly fun run, but for me it's going to be a pain because my fingers are going to hurt by the end of this run, and you'll see why here shortly. So we're going to get started. We're going to be easy, game level easy here. Extra joy here is something that you'll have to change if you ever start running this game. I'll change it to the A button here. It's usually off when you start it on the options menu. So I got that ready to go. And here we go. Let's start this thing. Rotorstorm, you ready to go?
Ready when you are.
All right. Let's do this thing. All right, we're going to do a lot of stun locking, so bear with me. All right, right off the bat, we're going to just destroy people and knee people. Just like in the last run. This one's basically not as crazy with the button, eating button inputs, that's for sure. All right.
Yeah, basically in Final Fight 2, you're basically... it's basically like the first game, but a little bit different because Hagar's the only returning character, and Carlos and Maki, who are also the playable characters, kind of fill in the roles of Cody and Guy as well. Maki takes over Guy's role as being the fastest but the weakest, but Carlos is pretty much the well-balanced fighter of the three, similar to Cody. And the plot for this game takes place sometime after the events of Final Fight 1, where the Mad Gear seeks revenge against Hagar and his allies. They target Guy's sensei as well as his daughter. Well, of course, they reconned it since they added the Final Fight characters to the Street Fighter series. But Guy's fiancée is Genryu Sai's daughter, so they target her as well as her father. The only one that doesn't get caught is Maki, who in turn notifies Hagar what has happened, and he decides to go after the Mad Gear gang, and Carlos comes along for the ride, pretty much. So basically, when you speedrun this game, Carlos and Hagar are probably the best ones to do runs with, for the most part. Maki's probably the worst due to her short punch range, but she has a very powerful extra joy, more powerful than Carlos's and Hagar's, at specific range that is. But given my own personal experience from playing Carlos, he can be very difficult with the infinites, especially if you get plagued with hit stops, because this game does have pretty bad frame storage like the first game.
Dang it.
It does take quite a bit of practice. So basically, we want to use the infinite as much as possible, and in some cases we want to keep the crates and barrels intact to lower the amount of enemies, or in some cases replace some of these enemies in general. I started doing speedrunning on Final Fight 2 pretty much around 2014 to 2015, and that's pretty much when I began. It was originally a submission attempt for SD8 forums, which is still up, by the way, but it failed to pass due to various reasons, which I won't go into. But it made me relook the entire game and managed to find a lot of strats that most players will not use most of the time. I used to have the world record for easy 80% with Hagar until Noble Boy 77 beat that by 29 minutes, and I've still yet to do that. Problem is, I might be running the Wii U VC version, which is probably not the best. Probably the Wii VC is not even good either. But if you got other forms, you could probably use those instead. Versions, I mean. Anyway, Steve's coming up to the final part of round 1, which is Hong Kong. This is when where our chase to rescue Maki's family starts. So right now, Steve's doing pretty darn good. We're playing on easy mode for the most part, and that's because we do max damage with our attacks when you play either easy or normal. If you play on hard or expert, your damage does get reduced by half. And when that happens, your attacks deal less damage against most bosses except for Philippe and the Endoris, the weapon users, the acrobats. Well, the weapon users are Elliot and Elias. Acrobats, which I call them, are usually Eliza and Mary. Or if you're playing the US version, it would be Robert and Leon. Alice's and Johnny's, they also take less damage. On those difficulties, most enemies should take normal damage, I believe. I haven't clarified that yet or found anything yet, but most of the damage formula is found by Murphy-Gator, who used to do speedruns on beat-em-ups. But anyway, Steve's now in round 2, which is France. We'll be spending most of the game going over most of the European countries in the game. France, then Holland, then England, and then Italy. So basically right now, Steve's going to utilize the infinites to maximize his damage output. Once you start getting used to knowing how much damage you deal with your attacks, you can definitely know, don't have to rely so heavily on the infinites.
No.
It's definitely a good shortcut if you don't want to burn out your fingers. But technically the infinites is definitely the best way to maximize your damage.
Yeah, I just got ripped apart by that Andor.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that
anyway, I got
was like
delay over on my side, but I can see it. But yeah, unlike Final Fight 1, the Endoris are pretty tamed here. They will charge usually to where your character is standing, so if you do a backflip, you can avoid getting hit. But yeah, most of the common enemies, like the Mick, Bull, Elijah, and Marks, and Scott and Jax tend to act as the foot soldiers of this new version of Mad Gear. I think the most difficult enemy of the new batch is probably the Johnnies and Alice's. And these guys definitely love to block your attacks. They also have Zangief's magic grab, pretty much. So they can basically grab you out of range from a specific distance. The Endoris don't nearly grab you as much, but they can still hit you. I mean, they can still do a pile driver or a strangle on you, but usually most of their move list is pretty tame in this version. Apparently, Capcom wanted to make these guys a little bit more doable to fight, unlike the first game. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with Eliza's and Mary's, or if you're playing the US version, Roberts and Leon's, once you get very good at playing the game, you can somewhat anticipate the order when the enemies come out, and if you know that those guys are going to be coming out next, you can prepare a jump attack to intercept them. So anyway, Steve's coming up to the next part right here, the third and final part of round 2. There is the ability to despawn enemies if you time your throws just right, but these minor enemies tend to have a very wavy pattern, pretty much. So we want to keep this crate intact so that we can despawn the Johnny that would normally be here. Basically, like I said before, if you keep crates or barrels intact, you can avoid having to deal with extra enemies. And this can even apply to enemies in the next screen after.
Oh, stop hugging me.
Yeah, I got a feeling Steam's probably more further than I'm seeing.
Yeah, Atlas, he wants to just be a friend of mine right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, these guys tend to love grabbing you once you get very close to them. It's probably best not to fight them on the same plane as them. Same with the Elex. Elex are unpredictable. And technically in higher difficulties, they will deal a lot more damage when they do their electrified charge attacks. So that's one thing you want to be aware of when you play this game at higher difficulties.
All right.
But yeah, you can sometimes bait the Alice's and Johnny's into guarding, and then you can walk up to them and grab them. They're technically more vulnerable to being grabbed. So West Point Steve's definitely coming up to Freddy. He's probably fighting him right now since I'm seeing pretty much... all right, now he's at it. So, unlike Hagar, Carlos and Maki can probably definitely infinite Freddy without having him breaking out of your infinites. Freddy's pretty much a 2.0 Andori, pretty much. The only thing that separates him from them is pretty much his jumping knee attack. Other than that, he can do strangles and power drivers just like the Andoris. Unfortunately, the enemy reinforcements that Freddy gets is pretty consistent too. So anyway, West Point Steve should be coming up to the bonus stage. Basically, using the extra joy really helps because you can hit both sides of the car at once.
There we go.
So all I have to do now is hit that one side. Oh. Yeah.
That's what that is. Oh, my van, not my car.
Break out completely in 19 seconds with Hagar, but sometimes the best time is usually 18 to 17 with him. With Carlos and Maki, it's probably possible it's 16 to 17 through the way that Steve just did just now. All right, Holland is pretty much the place where runs can go to die, pretty much, because this stage is pretty brutal. You won't see a whole lot of health power-ups, so taking deaths is going to be pretty common.
Oh, that's a good. 95 is good there. Just right here, I'm going to speak on this part here with the mines. If you do this just right, you don't get an atlas if you move the screen fast enough. So some areas you'll actually not have to play an enemy because of the fact that you move the screen fast enough. So
like I said earlier, Steve's probably way further ahead than my commentary, but he's pretty much was at the mines, but technically we want to get rid of those mines because they do cause lag, and the faster you get rid of them, the more better. So he'll be coming up against the Andoris and some enemies coming up. You get about at least 10 or 9 enemies here. It is possible to despawn Jack and Mark before that, but it's very hard to get the proper setup. So right now, Steve's doing pretty well. It's down to the last batch of enemies.
Stop hugging me.
So anyway, this one, the crate will usually sometimes not have anything, but every once in a while there will be a huge health recovery item. But it's not very consistent. But yeah, Holland only has 2 sections in general because the first part of Holland is pretty long because we got to go up to inside a building and up this lift coming up. Then we gotta fight some enemies. Now you want to hold up when that happens because when you do that, you pretty much have a chance of avoiding being leaped attacked. Or go down like Steve just did. But yeah, most the enemies that appear here will change depending on the difficulty. Here in easy, we deal with Grandpa and Dory as well as Alice. Now, every once in a while, these Alice's and Johnny's will break your infinites if they get enough time out of their hit stun to do that. Sometimes it's more better just to grab them and attack them. There's plenty of ways to break through their defenses. Because while they block your normal hits, you can always retaliate with jump attacks, or if you get very lucky, you can grab them. So anyway, Steve's coming up to the final part where he's fighting the last few remaining enemies, which is... Yeah, you don't want to be near any, like if it rears back a bit. So he's coming up to the second section right there. If everything goes according to plan, he can keep that barrel intact and remove the Elliot, but it doesn't look like it, so he's going to get all 3 enemies out. So that means Elliot will be coming out to fight coming up. Once he gets through this section. But yeah, sometimes despawning enemies really does help because it does save you quite a bit of time dealing with those enemies. But sometimes you might have to sacrifice despawn to recover health or just speed up the process. Ooh, that's a pretty nasty sandwich right there.
There we go. Let's see if I can get this. Ooh, despawn one.
Yeah, he's pretty much referring to the next part right here. It is possible to despawn 1 or 2 more enemies. It really depends on enemy recovery. Enemy recovery in this game is pretty finicky because sometimes enemies will take their time recovering, whereas some will get right back up afterwards. So I believe Steve's probably fighting the last bit of enemies for Holland.
Don't you all just like the delay? I just got destroyed by a Bracken punch.
Yeah, Bracken is probably the most complex of the bosses. Final Fight 2. He has a very large move list, despite being simplistic, but Bracken makes it up with its power. So as long as Steve keeps him trapped, he'll be able to make sure he doesn't get any more moves out.
Could have been better.
Bracken has a tendency of retreating once he attacks you. But yeah, Bracken's probably, of the 3 giant bosses you get to fight, Bracken's probably the most difficult to fight. It definitely really upturns the difficulty of the boss fights coming up. So right now, from my side, I'm seeing him entering England. We do get a hit 1-up right off the gate, but one that could be just as brutal as Holland. And that's because most of the more devastating, more deadlier enemies come out to fight you in this stage than the normal foot soldiers you normally fight.
Oh. Got nice Atlas punch there.
Yeah. Yeah, Atlas does moderate damage with all of his attacks, especially if he gets his palm thrust combo complete. Bear Hug is just pretty nasty. So right now he's getting ready to complete, get near to the end of the first part of round 4. So basically he's going to be fighting a lot of enemies, namely the Elias, the Atlas, the Acrobats, and then a Jack and an Endori Jr. So unlike Carlos and Maki, Hagar can hit enemies out of bounds if there's a wall nearby. But since Steve's playing Carlos, he'll be using the Infinite instead. Excellent job. So the next part of the stage, we have to be on the rooftop of the train from here on out. And he'll be fighting more nasty enemies. Because if you thought
nice enemies, they're not nasty.
I don't know about that. From my own perspective, they're pretty bad.
Oh no, this section here coming up with the Andor, that's my worst section in this.
Yeah, that's a time eater pretty much. The Andoris have tons of health to the point that it eats up a good amount of your time, no matter the difficulty. I usually joke of the fact that the Andoris are more like trees in this game.
Well, those Eliases and Elliots can just ruin a nice infinite.
Oh yeah, Elliots and Eliases tend to rely very heavily on box tactics, which they always hang around the corner and they wait until you get distracted fighting more enemies. Of course, the Alliance, the blockers tend to be locking on your position whenever you fight them. So basically, if you're anywhere above or below them, they'll always try to keep themselves right in front of you most of the time too. Elix tend to have a bad, nasty giveaway if they move back. That's usually an indicator for charging, but they can also charge without warning.
Yes.
So right now, Steve's coming up against the Joes. You usually fight more of them in higher difficulties, and he'll be coming up against Philippe. And if he succeeds in keeping him stun locked, he won't be doing much. Of course, my strat for Hagar is a bit different since I can't really inflict a lot of hit stop because unfortunately his infinites do not have very large hit stop stopping. I should say stun lock. But yeah. GG on fighting Philippe.
Yeah, Philippe is hit or miss. It's like if you get him in the stun lock, he's fine, but if you mess up one little hit on the stun lock, it's almost game over. Like you might want to just try to not get hit by a sliding attack, because I've had that happen many times where you just slide, and it's like, stop sliding, would you? I need
yeah, Philippe does more damage in expert difficulty if he does that cane pummel.
Yes, the cane pummel is a pain in the butt too.
Yeah, this bonus stage that he's doing right now is probably my least favorite out of the trilogy, namely because of I think the flames tend to be on a global timer for the most part.
They are.
I have no proof, of course.
They are. It's just it's tough. It's like there's no way of getting out of that, and so it's I don't know. I've been trying to figure out if there's any way to skip it, but there's really no way.
Yeah, unlike the little glass skip, there's no way of avoiding the flaming barrel stage. So anyway, Steve is at this point pretty much going into Italy. This is the pre-element stage, and this has 5 sections. Actually, one section is pretty much a freebie, since you don't have to fight any enemies, and we transition to the elevator scene. But we're fighting on the harbor, going into a ship, and then make our way to the next building where we fight Rolento, the only returning boss in this game. Of course, Rolento's a little bit toned down, but he still retains the same difficulty as he did in the first Final Fight game, or at least in the arcade version. You won't see him in the SNES version because Capcom didn't have enough time to put him in, of course, and due to their experience with SNES cartridge hardware at that time. They got a lot better during the years after that. So right now, Steve's fighting off the Elliot and the Endori Jr., and he'll be going into the next stage. He'll probably pick up the Ginryu side icon hidden behind this pillar, and we want to do that because we're coming up against the acrobats, and due to their unpredictability, they will usually proceed to utilize their leap attacks on you. So we do not want to be dealing with that. Now, it is possible to despawn Endori Jr. and Mark and Mick, because if you don't eliminate those guys from the equation by despawning, you would have to deal with those guys along with 7 other Elix. So that makes 10 enemies for this stop right here.
The Elix section was really pretty decent. I miscounted how many Elix I did though, so which was my fault. But.
Yeah, there's always 7 you have to deal with. So he's pretty much on his way to fighting on the elevator scene. So technically you want to try to hold off picking up the barbecue until near the end of the fights. But if you're pretty low on health, it's probably best to pick it up.
I'm sorry, I didn't do that. I should have warned you ahead of time.
Don't worry, you're good.
I needed the health. I didn't want to lose another life.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Oh, yeah, here's man.
So anyway,
here we go.
So once you get past this elevator stage, we'll be going directly to Rolento. And believe it or not, Carlos does have an advantage that Hagar and Maki do not have. is that you can basically punch Relento and Carlos off the walls, and he doesn't have to use the extra joy unlike those two. But technically, Steve's going to try to keep him in the infinite as much as possible.
Come on.
By the time he gets Relento down to the final health, they'll start throwing out the grenades. And when that happens, the grenades will usually land wherever your character is currently at on what plane. So if you were on an upper plane, Relento will throw the grenades wherever your character is at on that plane. So you can basically manipulate him to make sure he doesn't throw them all over the place.
No. Grenades are everywhere. Stop it.
Yeah, you don't. If you don't want the grenades being right around your center position, it's probably best to always put them on a plane that you don't want them on.
I feel sorry for everybody watching that one. That was yeah,
painful. Don't worry, it happens to everyone.
That was painful. He was not wanting to cooperate on the wall like I had him yesterday.
Yeah, sometimes these grenades have a mind of their own. They love to track you down, obviously.
Yeah, the one grenade just like followed me almost the entire plane, and I was like, "What the heck just happened?"
Yeah, that happens. Anyway, we're looking on to Japan, which is the final stage of the game. It is possible to despawn the 3 enemies as soon as they spawn, and then quickly jump over to the stop point, but that doesn't always work.
No, it didn't work. It was like, nope.
Yeah, don't worry.
Not gonna try.
It's usually best to knock them down when that happens.
Yeah.
Knocking them down is probably a more better way, and then quickly start jumping out of the way and getting over to the next area.
My favorite, Mary's and Eliza's doing their thing.
Or Robert's Leon's if you're playing the US version.
Yep. Robert Leon's. Hey, you know, let's just destroy everything in front of me by jumping. I think it's
believe it or
funny
not,
how they